gospel for today comes from Mark chapter 7, verses 24 through 37. And it's found on page 33 in your New Testament if you'd like to follow along. Hear the good news for this day. From there he set out and went away to the region of Tyre. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know he was there. Yet he could not escape notice. But a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit immediately heard about him. And she came and bowed down at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile of Syro-Phoenician origin. She begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. He said to her, "Let the children be fed first, for it is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." But she answered him, "Sir, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." Then he said to her, "For saying that, you may go. The demon has left your daughter." So he went home, found the child. She went home, found the child lying on the bed, and the demon gone. Then Jesus returned from the region of Tyre and went by way of Sidon towards the Sea of Galilee, in the region of the Decapolis. They brought to him a deaf man who had an impediment in his speech, and they begged Jesus to lay his hand on him. He took him aside in private, away from the crowd, and put his fingers into his ears, and he spat and touched his tongue. And then looking up to heaven, he sighed and said, "Be open." And immediately his ears were opened. His tongue was released, and he spoke plainly. Then here you hear it again. Jesus ordered them to tell no one. But the more he ordered them, the more zealous they proclaimed it. They were astounded beyond measure, saying, "He has done everything well. He even makes the deaf to hear and the mute to speak." This is our good news for this day. Please pray with me. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing in your sight, O God, my rock and my redeemer. Amen. Grace and peace to you from God, our Creator, and our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. I dubbed this week's gospel reading Bad Ninja Jesus. It's Chris Farley, if you didn't know. It's from a movie I don't think anybody saw called Beverly Hills Ninja. He was not a good ninja. But in our gospel reading, everywhere that Jesus went, he attempts to not let anyone know that he was there. Sometimes he just thinks it, but other times he outwardly tells them, "Don't tell anyone." But always they track him down. Always they find out. If he's really trying to move in secret, casting a demon out of a little girl from far away in front of everybody is the ninja equivalent of knocking over a china cabinet. When Jesus orders the deaf man's friends to tell no one about what they'd seen, I imagine James Bond sneaking into the evil villain's hideout and grabbing the attractive assistant and informing her, "Tell no one I was here." But Jesus is not James Bond. He, of course, gets caught faster than you can say, "Dr. No." But this bad ninja Jesus is a problem for me. If Jesus is God, and as we believe, he's the only person that's ever been God, and if we have in fact been waiting thousands of years for God to become one of us, why is that God sneaking around? Why does he act so strangely when Pilate is interrogating him? Pilate asks, "Are you the Son of God?" And Jesus is either silent or he says this strange phrase, "You say so." If I were God, and let me be clear, I'm not, and I don't think it'd be a good idea for me to be God. But if I were, I would want as many people as possible to see me doing all of these amazing big miracles. You know, the more witnesses, the better, right? If there had been more witnesses, wouldn't there have been more converts? And if there had been more witnesses, wouldn't there be less denominations? Because everyone together would know all the specifics about communion and baptism and clergy and heaven and morality and everything else. But no, instead we have a God that was made human that decides to do everything in secret and is decidedly bad at it. A God that is my patent pending bad ninja Jesus. I'm going to copyright that eventually. There'll be shirts. But the real meat of this issue is why? Why would God act like this? How is this a good plan? Aren't we supposed to tell as many people as possible the good news? Aren't we supposed to do what Jesus did? I mean, don't get me wrong. As a at times reserved person, I know I stand up here, I can talk in front of a crowd, but a lot of times I'm a kind of reserved person. And so hearing that Jesus wanted to do everything in secret, in the background, in the shadows, makes me feel good. Hey, why did you sit in that party and not talk to anybody? It's just being like Jesus. What would Jesus do? Ignore people. It has nothing to do with being uncomfortable or wanting some quiet time where your kids aren't attacking you. Following Jesus. But I've heard a number of reasons why Jesus is so secretive. Why he continually asks people to tell no one, and they all make sense. But none of them really work for me. The most popular one, the most common explanation is that Jesus is so sneaky because if he wasn't, crowds upon crowds would be following him everywhere that he went. He wouldn't be able to get anything done. But remind me if I'm wrong. A few weeks back we talked about Jesus feeding 5,000 people, not counting women and children. That's a pretty big crowd, right? That's kind of a lot of people following him around. That problem is already there. Word has already gotten out. Some say he moved quickly and quietly because he worried about the Roman authority tracking him down. Well, again, let's say that I'm God. I'm not. But the Roman authority comes at me and I just say, boom, play. Leave me alone or it's going to be raining frogs. Oh, you like frogs? Fireballs. They leave me alone. But God doesn't act like that. And that's probably for the best. But if the Romans tracked him down, wouldn't it have ended how it ended anyway? With the crucifixion? Another argument I've heard, and it's made by someone who clearly worked with children, is that Jesus made it a secret because he knew exactly what would happen the minute you tell someone they can't tell anyone. What do? They tell everyone. If you ever want to get a child to read a book, put that book on your tallest shelf and then bring them over and point at it and say, this is my book of secrets. It has all of my secrets in it. Don't read it. And then leave. I guarantee you, when you get back, that book will be in the same exact spot, but they've read it cover to cover and are now disappointed in you because it didn't have any secrets. This is maybe the most persuasive argument that I've heard for why Jesus is so secretive. People like a mystery. People like being on the end of something. But there's a problem with this. If Jesus is doing it this way, is that it kind of makes Jesus a liar. It's a white lie, don't get me wrong. But he definitely wasn't being completely honest about his intentions if that's why he was doing this. And I've always seen Jesus as kind of a shoot from the hip kind of guy. He tells you how it is. He's almost always honest. Not almost honest. He is always honest. So what are we to do with Jesus continually telling people to tell no one, seemingly for no good reason? I want to present you with a different kind of theory. One I read about recently, but one that is a very old one that apparently goes back to John Mark, the author of this gospel. It's what he's trying to tell us all along. Holiness is dangerous. The power of God is dangerous. Any sane person that comes in contact with it would run for the hills for fear of their lives if they knew what was good for them. Held within Jesus is the full power of God, and that power is something that even Jesus seems unable to completely control. When we hear that, we think, no, Jesus is in control. He is always in control. But look at the healing that he did earlier in Mark. The woman that reaches out and touches the hem of his cloak. He actually asks the question, who touched me? It's almost an accusation. Who took power from me against my wishes? Without my control. Look at how even when Jesus is in bad ninja mode, the demons recognize power in him, as if the power is simply radiating out of his skin. I'm starting to think that, in part, Jesus moves around in secret because if he touches someone's life, he doesn't necessarily know what's going to happen to them. Think about it. Just touching the fringe of his garment, getting the scraps from his table, even spit from his mouth, is enough to change someone's life forever. But think about this. How many of you here like change? Most people don't want their lives changed. Most people will fight tooth and nail against anyone who would change anything about them, even if it's in their self-interest. Which is honestly what kind of happens to Jesus. What leads to his crucifixion. Jewish scholars today talk a lot about what Jesus wanted to change about Judaism. They've changed. A lot of what he pushed for were reforms that were needed within Judaism. They just couldn't hear it because they didn't want to change. And here's something really important we need to realize. Something that's different about our God, different about Jesus than any other religion, is that God doesn't want robots. God doesn't want mindless zealots. God didn't come to control us, but to set us free. God came to make friends, fellow builders of the kingdom of God. And the only way you do that is person to person. Loving interaction by loving interaction. That's why he told people to tell no one, because who was the miracle for when the woman's daughter was healed? The woman and her daughter. Who was the miracle for when he released whatever was wrong in the person's ear and their tongue? That person. You have no idea how a miracle or how it happened is going to affect somebody else. I mean, I already picture the argument that somebody else makes about the man that was mute and Jesus heals. What took you so long? That mute person might be over here dancing for joy that now they can speak and hear again, but somebody else hears that and it took God 30 years to get there. What kind of God is that? God comes to us one person at a time. That's always how God has worked. One life changed at a time, because each person is special and different. Each one of you are special and different. Our Bible tells us that God counts the very hairs on your head. God made you to be something in this world that no one else can be, and God can somehow give you a one-size-fits-all miracle? Here, this is the only thing you need. Everyone's good. We know the world doesn't work like that. We want the world to work like that, but it doesn't. And God knows that. Go and tell no one. This one was for you. But this one at a time, life-changing thing is also why Jesus says we will do greater things than him, because even if Jesus, let's say Jesus is knocking out 8 miracles a day. He only lived till he was 33. We only know really about 3 years of active ministry. I'm not that good at math, but that's not a ton. No one say that number if you can do that. But everyone that came after him, look at that picture. Look at who is watching him do it. Who is next to step up? We are. A person at a time. Through Christ and the Spirit within you guiding you, you are now radioactively holy. And you better start thinking about how you are going to irreparably change people's lives. Not necessarily in the way you think, and not usually on a group level. But God leads you, guides you to each new phase, giving you words to say if you're open to saying them, giving you new actions to do if you're willing to risk that, giving you new miracles to be accomplished if you think that they're possible. This is what it means to be a Christian. Not memorizing some words or judging people as carefully as possible or even being as perfect as possible. But about passing on holiness, one cloak touch, one scrap, one bit of spit, maybe a cup of water at a time. You have to start thinking about how you're going to be Bad Ninja Nancy, Bad Ninja Brenton, Bad Ninja Dawn. Because the power of God is waiting to burst out of you and act. And there's absolutely nothing you can do about it except pass it on. Amen.